Back in 2017, I moved to a town that barely felt real. It was the kind of rural town you don't find unless you're specifically looking for it. One main road, a single gas station, a diner that closed before dark. Most of the people living there were retired, and most of them had lived there their entire lives. I didn't belong there. I was in my early 20s, newly single and painfully introverted. I had moved there for work, thinking the quiet would help me reset my life. Instead, it just made me feel more alone. The only person I knew in town was a woman named Clara. She worked mornings at the local diner and afternoons at the post office. She had a husband and a young child, and that exhausted kindness you only see in people who are constantly giving themselves away. One afternoon, while I was having coffee at the diner, Clara mentioned that an older couple she knew needed a dog sitter. "They're going on vacation for a week," she said casually. "They pay well, thought it might help you get settled." I hesitated. "Are they normal?" I asked, half joking. Clara laughed. "Yeah, just a little old school, nice people." That was good enough for me. I said yes. A few days later, Clara drove me out to meet them. Their house was at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by thick woods on all sides. The driveway curved just enough that you couldn't see the house until you were almost on top of it. It was a single-story brick ranch house from the 1970s. Old, outdated, slightly falling apart. The kind of house that had never been renovated, only patched. I didn't mind. The dogs greeted me first. Two medium-sized mutts, tails wagging, friendly and excited. They were immediately comforting. Animals don't lie. The couple stood behind them. They were probably in their early 50s, though something about them made their age hard to pin down. The husband was tall and thin, with stiff posture. The wife smiled a lot, but her eyes never quite matched the smile. They invited me inside. The house smelled old, not dirty, just lived in. Dust, paper, and something faintly metallic. As we talked, I noticed something strange. They didn't make eye contact. When I spoke, their eyes didn't meet mine. Instead, they moved slowly over my face, my shoulders, my hands, like they were studying me. During the house tour, they barely spoke. The husband would open a door, stand aside, and wait silently while I looked inside. No explanations, no descriptions, just silence. Then he would close the door and move on. It felt less like a tour and more like being shown evidence. That's when I noticed the cameras. One by the front door, one in the hallway, one in the living room, another in the kitchen, the office, the garage, outside, backyard, driveway, everywhere. I must have stared too long because the wife noticed. "Oh," she said lightly, "those are for insurance, we sell firearms." That made sense, kind of. I nodded and didn't ask questions. I should have asked questions. A few days later, they left for vacation. I moved into the house with my laptop, clothes, and an uneasiness I couldn't explain. I worked from home, so I set up my desk in their office. A large monitor displayed live camera feeds of the entire property. It felt invasive, but also comforting. The house backed up to thick woods, and being able to see outside made me feel safer. The dogs had a doggy door, so they could go in and out whenever they wanted. The first night passed without incident. The second night, around 10 p.m., I noticed something. The driveway camera had gone offline. I told myself it was bad rural internet. Still, something about it bothered me. I stood up and walked toward the back door. Before I reached it, the dogs exploded into barking. They bolted through the doggy door and ran straight toward the fence line where the woods began. This wasn't playful barking. This was panic. I couldn't see anything out there, just darkness and trees. Trying not to scare myself, I grabbed treats and lured them back inside. I blocked the doggy door with a heavy chair and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up late. The house was silent. The dogs weren't in the bedroom. I called their names. Nothing. When I reached the back door, I saw them outside, calm and relaxed. That's when my stomach dropped. The chair was no longer blocking the doggy door. It had been moved, pushed all the way into the corner of the room. I knew the dogs couldn't have done that. I stood there for a long time, staring at the chair in the corner. I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe I hadn't pushed it as tightly against the door as I remembered. Maybe the dogs had somehow knocked it loose and it slid across the floor. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself, my body didn't believe it. That chair was heavy. I remembered dragging it with both hands, the legs scraping loudly against the tile. There was no way two dogs could have moved it 5 feet and neatly placed it in the corner. My hands started shaking. I didn't even feed the dogs. I grabbed my phone and called Clara. When she answered, I didn't say hello. I just said, "Can you come here right now?" She heard something in my voice and didn't argue. She arrived about 20 minutes later. I watched her car pull into the driveway from the front window and felt a rush of relief I hadn't realized I needed. I opened the door before she even knocked. We walked through the house together. Every room, every closet, under the beds, inside the garage. Nothing. No broken locks. No open windows. No signs of anyone being there. Clara tried to calm me down. She said stress can mess with your memory. She said maybe I thought I blocked the door more than I actually had. She said old houses make noises and play tricks on you. I nodded along. What else could I do? Eventually she left. The moment her car disappeared down the gravel road, the house felt empty again. Not quiet, empty. Like something had been taken out of it and the space hadn't settled yet. I locked every door. That night I barely slept. The next few days crawled by. I stayed hyper-aware of everything. Every creak, every shift in temperature, every time the dogs paused and stared at something I couldn't see. I kept the camera monitor on at all times. It was the only thing that made me feel remotely safe. On the 4th night, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. All of the camera feeds were black. Every single one. Not frozen. Not glitching. Offline. I checked the Wi-Fi router. Everything looked fine. I unplugged and restarted it anyway. Nothing changed. I sat there staring at the blank monitor, my mind racing. One camera going out was believable. Rural internet wasn't great, but all of them at the same time. That didn't feel accidental. I texted the couple, letting them know their cameras were down and asking if they wanted me to troubleshoot anything. I didn't mention how uneasy it made me feel. Hours passed. No response. By the time midnight rolled around, I was exhausted. I turned on the TV just to have noise in the house and lay down in bed. That's when the dogs jumped up. They sprinted toward the doggy door, barking wildly. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed the kitchen knife I had started keeping next to the bed and walked slowly toward the back door. I looked out into the yard. Nothing. The dogs stopped barking and started sniffing along the fence line. Then I heard it. A dull thump. It didn't come from outside. It came from inside the house. From the back room. I froze. Every instinct told me not to go near it. Instead, I focused on the dogs. I forced them back inside and blocked the doggy door again with the chair, this time taking a photo of it with my phone. Proof. I walked toward the back room. And that's when I felt it. The air was different. It wasn't cold or warm, it was heavy. Like the silence itself had weight. There was a subtle static in the room, like the moment before a storm breaks. I knew I wasn't alone. I said, "Who's there?" My voice sounded small. No response. I called the couple's names. Nothing. I stepped back, closed the door quietly, locked it, and walked away without turning my back to it. I sat in the living room with the dogs, knife in one hand, phone in the other. I didn't know what to do. Then my phone buzzed. A text from the wife. "Don't worry about the cameras, you're safe." I stared at the screen. I never said I felt unsafe. Another message came in. "Can you check if I left the garage door open to the inside? I don't want anything getting in." My heart started pounding. The garage door was in that back room. I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, another text. "I see you're awake. Can you please check for me?" That's when it hit me. They could see me, even with the cameras offline. I had completely forgot there were cameras in the hallway and living room. My stomach twisted. Why were they pushing this so hard at 1 a.m? I stood up and walked toward the back room, knife in one hand, phone in the other. As I reached the door, I heard a faint shuffle from inside. I stopped. My phone buzzed again. "I see you're up." I unlocked the door and opened it slowly, keeping as much distance as possible. The room looked empty. The door to the garage was open. The inside of the garage was pitch black. I didn't want to go any closer, but I forced myself forward. As I took a step, my phone lit up with a notification, casting faint light into the doorway. That's when I saw it. An arm, pressed flat against the wall beside the door. Human. Fight or flight took over. I ran. I slammed the door shut, locked it, grabbed my keys and bolted out the front door. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before I got the door unlocked. As I started the car, I saw the garage door beginning to rise. My headlights flooded the space. A grown man was crouched inside, hiding behind a box, watching me. I didn't hesitate. I threw the car into reverse and flew down the driveway straight to the police station. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the parking lot of the police station until sunrise, hands locked around the steering wheel, replaying the image of that man in the garage over and over in my head. When the officers finally took my statement, I felt stupid saying it out loud. I think someone was hiding in the house I was house-sitting. They exchanged looks. They asked the usual questions. Did I know him? Was anything stolen? Had I invited anyone over? I told them everything about the chair, the cameras going offline, the texts, the arm pressed against the wall. One officer frowned when I mentioned the messages. "Can you show us?" I handed him my phone. He scrolled silently. Then he paused. "Sir, these messages didn't come in last night." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "These were sent 3 days ago." I snatched the phone back. The timestamps were right. Same words. Same messages. Different night. My mouth went dry. I remembered my phone buzzing. I remembered reading them while standing in the hallway. I remembered my hands shaking as I unlocked the door. But according to my phone, none of it happened when I thought it did. The officers exchanged another look, this one heavier. They asked if I'd be willing to go back to the house with them. Every part of me screamed no. But I agreed. The house looked normal in daylight. Too normal. The dogs were gone. The couple had arranged for a neighbor to take them that morning. The yard was quiet. No broken locks. No signs of forced entry. The garage was empty. No man. No boxes moved. No hiding place. One officer checked the crawl space. Another searched the attic. Nothing. Then they checked the cameras. All of them were working perfectly. No outages. No missing footage. The officer turned the monitor toward me. "Want to tell me what I'm supposed to be seeing here. We rewound the night. I watched myself on screen, sitting on the couch, staring at the TV, not moving, for hours. No dogs barking, no rushing down the hallway, no opening the back room. Just me sitting there. My skin crawled. "That's not right," I whispered. I was moving, I was texting, I was. The footage didn't change. At one point, around 1:12 a.m., I stood up. I walked to the back room. I opened the door. I stood there for nearly 4 minutes, completely still. Then I closed it. Calmly. No running. No panic. And then I went back to the couch and sat down. My heart was hammering. "Can we see inside the back room?" I asked. One officer opened the door. The room was empty. But on the wall beside the garage door, right where I swore I saw the arm, there was a faint, dark smear. Like a handprint. But it wasn't fresh. It was old. The officer frowned. "This has been here a while." "How long?" I asked. "Hard to say, weeks, maybe months." I felt dizzy. That's when the couple called. The wife sounded cheerful. "Hey, we heard you went to the police. Everything okay?" I didn't bother being polite. "Why didn't you tell me someone had been living in your house?" Silence. Then a sigh. "No one was living there," she said. "Not exactly." The husband took the phone. "We didn't think it would matter," he said calmly. "He doesn't usually move." I felt my blood turn cold. "Who," I asked slowly, "is he?" Another pause. "Then the previous owner." I almost laughed. "That's not funny." "He never left," the husband said. "Not completely." They explained it like it was nothing. The man who owned the house before them had died alone. He wasn't found for days. After they bought the place, strange things kept happening. Sounds, shadows, doors opening. But nothing violent. Nothing until recently. They said sometimes the cameras picked up movement where no one should be. Sometimes messages appeared on their phones that neither of them remembered sending. They didn't tell me because it doesn't happen to everyone. I hung up. The police couldn't do much. No trespasser. No break-in. No crime. They suggested stress, exhaustion, maybe even sleepwalking. But that didn't explain the footage. Or the handprint. Or the messages that existed on my phone before I received them. I left that town the same day. I didn't take another house-sitting job for months. I tried to forget. But here's the thing. 3 weeks later, I got a notification from a security camera app I didn't own. A live feed opened on my phone. It was the living room of that house. The camera angle was wrong, lower than before, closer to the floor. Someone was sitting on the couch, staring directly into the camera. And then a message appeared on the screen. "You forgot to block the door." I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. I didn't touch it. I didn't blink. My mind kept repeating the same sentence over and over. I deleted that app. I remembered doing it. I remembered holding my phone, uninstalling it, watching the icon disappear. There was no reason, no way that feed should exist. And yet it did. I threw the phone onto the bed like it had burned me. For a long time, I just sat there in silence, listening to my own breathing, waiting for another notification. None came. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been some delayed glitch. Maybe the app never fully uninstalled. Maybe my phone restored something automatically. I needed logic. I needed anything that made sense. So I picked up the phone again. The app was gone. No icon. No history. No notifications. Nothing. That scared me more than if it had still been there. That night, I dreamed of the house. But it wasn't the house the way I remembered it. The walls were closer together. The ceiling was lower. The air felt thick, like breathing through fabric. I was standing in the hallway, staring at the back room door. And this time, it was already open. Something inside me knew not to go in. Something else forced me forward anyway. As I stepped closer, a voice spoke from behind me. My voice. "You forgot to block the door." I woke up screaming. I started noticing small things after that. At first, they were easy to ignore. A chair slightly out of place. A door I swore I had locked, unlocked in the morning. My phone lighting up at night with no notifications. I told myself it was anxiety. That's what people say when reality starts slipping. One evening, about a month later, I came home from work exhausted. I locked the door behind me, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the couch. That's when I noticed it. The air felt wrong. Not cold. Not warm. Occupied. The hairs on my arm stood up. I sat very still and listened. That's when I heard it. A soft sound. Breathing. Not mine. It was coming from down the hallway. Slow. Steady. Patient. I didn't move. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't even turn my head. I just sat there, staring straight ahead, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it could hear me. The breathing stopped. Silence stretched. Then, a weight pressed into the couch beside me. The cushion dipped. I felt it. Whatever it was, it didn't touch me. It didn't need to. I could feel the shape of it, the presence, the attention. And then softly, right next to my ear, it whispered, "You remember now." I don't remember getting up. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I only remember being outside, gasping for air like I'd been underwater. I didn't go back inside that apartment. I stayed with friends, then family, then anywhere that wasn't there. For a while it stopped. No dreams. No sounds. No signs. I thought maybe it was finally over. Until last week. I was scrolling through my phone late at night when I saw something that made my blood run cold. A notification preview. Motion detected. From a camera app. I don't own any cameras. My hands were shaking as I tapped it. The screen loaded slowly. Then the video appeared. It was my bedroom. My current bedroom. The angle was wrong, low, like the camera was sitting on the floor, angled upward. I was in the frame. Asleep. The timestamp was live. I watched as my sleeping body shifted slightly. Then, from the darkness near the closet, something moved. A shape unfolded itself slowly, like it had been crouching for a long time. It stood. Too tall. Too still. It leaned toward the camera. And then the video ended. One last message appeared on my screen. "You don't need the chair anymore. I'm not moving again. I'm not running. Because wherever I go, it's already there. If you're watching this, and you ever feel like your house isn't empty, block the door. And don't forget the chair."